This video is going to go over how to answer some questions on the exercise on Khan Academy with the title Arc Length. And this exercise was assigned on the second week of distance learning. Let's see what the question is asking. A circle has a circumference of 6. It has an arc length of 1/3. What is the central angle of the arc in degrees? Now, to answer questions like these, we could set up a ratio. On the left side of my ratio, I have the fraction that talks about angle measurements. On the numerator, we are talking about the part, so only the small part of the circle we're talking about, and we are talking about the angle measure of the whole circle. On the right side of my ratio, we're talking about arc length. On the numerator, just like the blue fraction, we're talking about the part, so the arc length of this small part right here of the circle. And in the denominator, we're talking about the arc length of the whole circle, which is basically its circumference. So let's go ahead and use our given to set up the ratio. The first thing we are given is that we have a circumference of 6. Now, a circumference is just the distance around the circle. So we are going to put that under the arc length of the whole circle. The next thing we are given is that our small part here has an arc length of 1/3. So the arc length of the part, just the small part right here, this is going to be 1/3. So it might look a little bit funky right now because we have a fraction as our numerator, but we're going to simplify that in just a second to make things a little bit clearer for you. Now, the next part of the question is telling us what we're finding. We are finding the central angle of the arc in degrees. So we're looking for this measurement. How many degrees is this? So that is the angle measure of the part. We don't know what that is. I'm going to put that as x. Now, you all should know that for us to be able to find what x is, it has to be the only variable that we're looking for. Basically, what that means is that every other part of the fraction needs to be filled in. But right now, we still have a blank, and we don't have any more givens. The denominator for this fraction talks about the angle measure of the whole circle. Well, what do you know about the angle measure of the whole circle? It's always going to be 360 degrees. So our ratio is now complete. We have one variable, so we will be able to solve for that. Now there's many different first steps that you can take, but what I'm going to do is I want to simplify this fraction on the right side first. So let's just copy exactly the left side of my equal sign. Equal sign right here. All right, now let's simplify. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take the numerator, 1/3, and instead of dividing by 6, well, 6 is the same as 6/1. And division is actually just the same as multiplying by its reciprocal. So 1/3 is 1/3/6 is the same as 1/3 times 1/6. Now you see how we just flipped these numbers to get 1/6. Now multiplying across, you will get in the numerator 1 times 1 will give us 1, and in the denominator 3 times 6 is going to give you 18. So we have now simplified this funky looking thing into simply 1/18. So I'm just going to copy the left side of my equal sign, which is x over 360. Now that the ratio is looking a little bit more manageable, what we want to do is isolate the variable. To isolate the variable, we need to do the opposite operation of what's being done to it right now. Right now, we are dividing by 360. And the opposite of that is going to be multiplying by 360. And if we do one thing on the left side of my equal sign, to keep it balanced, to keep it even, we have to do the same thing on the right side. So I'm also going to multiply this to 360. Now 360 cancels out with 360. The numerator and denominator dividing into each other just becomes 1. So on the left side of my equal sign, I'm going to be left with that 1x. And that is going to be equal to 1 over 18 times 360. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make this into a fraction, because what we practiced earlier is all you have to do is multiplying across. So 1 times 360 in the numerator will give you 360. And in the denominator, multiplying across again, 18 times 1 will give us 18. At this stage, you can further simplify. There's many ways to do this, but we can divide. Let's see what happens if we divide 360 divided by 18. 360 divided by 18 is going to give us 20. Which means that the angle measure of the part is 20, which is the exact thing we are looking for. Let's try another question. Let's set up our ratio again. Remember, on the left side, we're talking about angle measure. So I'm going to abbreviate that to AM so that the video doesn't stretch on too long. So we've got the angle measure of the part being divided by the angle measure of the whole. And this is going to be equal to, now on the right side, we're talking about arc length. So arc length, I'm going to abbreviate again, of the part. And in the denominator, I'm going to look for the arc length of, oh my gosh, it's looking a little bit weird. There you go. Whole. All right. So now that we've set it up, let's read the question. A circle with circumference 20 has an arc with a 72-degree angle. What is the length of this arc? So let's go ahead and set up our ratios. Let's make that a little bit better. Okay. All right. So 20 is the circumference. Remember that any circumference is just the same as the arc length of the whole circle. So I'm going to put 20 right here. That means that this distance all the way around is 20 units long. The next thing we are given is 72 degrees. So you should know that that is angle measure, because that is how you measure angles, in degrees. So you've got 72 degrees as your central angle right here. That is the measurement of the part of the circle. It's not the whole circle, it's just the part of the circle. So I'm going to put that in my numerator. The next thing is the question. What is the length of the arc? So that means we are looking for the arc length of this part of the circle. I'm going to call that part x. And I'm going to put it in my numerator right here. Now, just like we practiced earlier, we know that for us to be able to find x, it has to be the only variable that we do not know. Right now, again, we still have something that's missing. Let's look at our ratio to find out what we can put here. The denominator here on this fraction must be the arc measure of the whole circle. Well, the arc measure of the whole circle is always going to be 360 degrees. All right. Now, this ratio already looks pretty simple. It's not like the problem earlier where we had fractions over fractions. So let's just go ahead and see how we can get rid of this division by 20. Well, let's do opposite operations. Opposite of division is multiplication. And because 20 is the number we want to get rid of, I'm going to multiply by 20. To keep our equations balanced, I'm also going to do that on the left side of my equation, multiplying by 20 here as well. Now 20 divided by 20 becomes 1, so you will just be left with 1x. That was our goal all along, was to get x by itself. All right, what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to make this 20 into 20 over 1. 20 and 20 over 1 is just the same. And we're going to multiply across. Setting up the fraction. In the numerator, if you multiply 20 times 72, you're going to have 1,440. Now in the denominator, multiplying across, we're going to have 1 times 360 is 360. Okay. Now, typically, at this stage, we want to go simplify. So let's divide. 1440 divided by 360 is going to equal 4. That means that x is 4. Which means that this arc length that we labeled as x earlier, this arc length is equal to 4, which is what we are looking for. Now the thing that's lacking in this video is that everything, when we were looking for x, everything divided evenly into a whole number. Typically in class, I will be explicit and say whether or not I want the answer as a decimal or a fraction, say in the case where the numbers don't divide evenly. In most cases in class, I will accept both. However, for Khan Academy, they want you to keep your answers in fractions. So just keep that in mind in the case that x becomes something that is not completely divisible without a remainder. So just keep your answer as a fraction, put it in lowest terms instead. That's it.